Okay, I think we're live. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone, whoever's watching. And it's really good once again to be here. And I've got another amazing guest to introduce to you. And inshallah, it will be a great conversation again with, lots of insight and wisdom. And anybody who's watching back afterwards, or I'm going to record it, put it on YouTube. So hopefully we can, get these conversations out and about, but we've had good feedback so far. So once again, an amazing, brilliant, beautiful person in front of us, Tanya Williams, who I've known for actually, I think, a very, very long time. I was thinking about it earlier. I'm very blessed to have known you for a long time, one way or another, performing and getting you to perform and things. So thank you so much, Tanya. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Really, really very much appreciated. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for inviting me. No, I was thinking about it the other day as well. And I was thinking, I've known you for a long time. And I feel like, you see me really go from a child into like this adult, still just practicing the whole adulting thing. But like, here I am. So yeah, it's really great to be here. Thank you so much. I'm well. Thank you. I'm really good.
Very good. And so just set the scene for us. Where are you? Where are you speaking to us from? What are you up to these days? What work are you doing?
I am in Bristol in my bedroom. So I am in Bristol. I'm a Bristolian. I was born and raised in Bristol. I moved back just under 2 years ago now. Although initially for the first year or so, I was just traveling backwards and forwards between Bristol and London. So it felt like I was in London like 3 to 4 days a week sometimes. So I was there quite a bit. I guess towards the end of last year, I started to settle in Bristol a bit more. So of course, I am a cultural producer. I'm a poet, workshop facilitator, and essentially I'm a storyteller. I'm interested in narratives, different narratives, and that manifests itself in different ways. It can manifest itself in community research. It can manifest itself in terms of a poem. At the moment, I'm working in mental health. I manage a team essentially of mental health practitioners, and I don't like the term BAME, I really dislike it, but we, for funding purposes, we look after BAME young people within Bristol. And so like in all sorts of ways, from therapy, one-to-one therapies, talking therapies, right the way through to just finding creative and practical ways, as well as I'm doing a community research project. So I'm a community researcher looking at histories of Bristol and belonging and understanding just like rootedness and migration and travel and geopolitics, essentially.
Amazing. My son's in Bristol Uni, as I've said to you before, and he it's not so much the uni, although it's a great uni, it's the vibe and the city that they love. It's so popular with so many people and he loves it there. He just really sort of loves that whole Bristol vibe. I mean, you're saying you're obviously born there, you've done all your stuff, you've gone back there, and I just wonder, how have you felt over the last, Bristol has been in the headlines even more than normal over the last few months, and I just wonder how it's been for you as someone who feels very connected to the place. What's that been like?
Well, just to say, I mean, like, as we all know, that like anything that we see is really just a snippet. It's not really what's really happening. Bristol has been in the headlines, and there's been a whole lot of talks and discussions about what happened with the Edward Colston building. But what I can say, that is really just the tip of the iceberg. Bristol is such an intriguing city. Durrani did a report, and they found that Bristol is the most segregated core city. And if you look at the structure of Bristol and just the way how the city's set out, the neighborhoods are set out, it is a very segregated city, so you have things like that, but then after you have gentrification, some of it negative, of course, some of it not so negative, but how do you find that balance? The histories of like racism, and not just that, but like the histories of resistance of Caribbean people coming in, of Somali communities coming in. Now you have more communities coming in, and just like, how does a city deal with that, and how does a city tell that story and reflect and look at itself and look at what has come to be this really vibrant city, you know, one of the most moved to cities in the country. Also thinking about the fact that, like, I think it was The Guardian or something did this report, and it was like, hey, you know, Bristol has 3 of the coolest neighborhoods like in the country. But again, what does that mean against the backdrop of racism, of like poverty, of deprivation? What does that mean with so many people in a city of difference, or so many people like from different backgrounds in a city, but actually the city still being quite segregated? So it's interesting. It's a beautiful time to be in Bristol because it just feels like there's so much opportunity to just push, you know, and just like resist a little bit, and resisting in terms of like, yes, the fight, but also resisting in terms of arresting and being beautiful and loving. And, you know, these are different ways that we challenge as well. So yeah, it's good to be in Bristol.
So did you find yourself feeling sort of resentful, or how did you feel? Because you're right, you know, we only get like a snapshot, and you sort of then feel that there's a whole load of stuff in the background. And I think it's very difficult when you're actually part of a place and there's a view coming from elsewhere, but you know the kind of realities, the ups and the downs, and how hard it is for people, as well as people just doing really well despite, you know, barriers and stuff like that. I mean, how did you feel? Did you feel resentful for that, or?
I've been through so many different emotions, you know. I mean, the ups, the downs, like, you know, there was the idea, like, you know, Colston, the statue of Edward Colston, or Eddie, as I like to call him, coming down isn't a new thing. This is something that has been talked about for years and years, since I was a kid, right? We've been talking, we've been campaigning, you know. We have this big shopping center called Cabot Circus. It was built maybe less than 20 years ago. Like Cabot, John Cabot, again, a big slaver. You know, the streets of Bristol are literally lined with these histories of like oppression, right? And so this whole, and even the organizations, one of the organizations who was like really instrumental in slavery still exists. And they would say, oh, we're more of a philanthropy organization, this, that, and the other. And, you know, but like, there's just a lot of narratives that aren't being told. In terms of the statue coming down, I can't deny it. I was there at the time. And I cannot deny the physical feeling of like, you know, it was just so cathartic, right? Just like, wow, this has happened. I've been walking these streets for so many years, and actually is really significant, because I remember when I was younger and growing up, there were parts of Bristol, as I said, like I didn't really go to the center of Bristol. I went to a shopping center, but not beyond a particular point. And actually, that statue represents the point that I didn't really go beyond unless I had to, you know? And so I think that's really interesting. But at the same time, you know, even thinking about who poured it down, the communities that poured it down, you know, all of these different things. But I think there's so many different things to come from this, and it's discussion, and it's, you know, agitation as well. Even though I feel like right now we're having a tiny bit of like backpedaling. I think there was this real thrust of like, okay, we want change, you know, how do we create change? And I think people see the need for change, but the implications, or as Bell Hooks would say, the implications of change for some people is just a bit too uncomfortable to deal with. Yeah, how do we get there?
Gosh, it's fascinating. Can I just say, Junaid, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. And just to remind people that please do comment or ask questions or respond to what our beautiful sister is saying, because otherwise we can't see you. So we kind of like know that there are people there, but, you know, please do let us know that you're there. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in, and I'll do my best to kind of feed them into what we're talking about. So I'd love to know about you as a, you know, you're Black Muslim woman, you know, lots of other parts of your identity. Some could say, you know, there would be lots of layers of, if you like, discrimination within all of that, I guess. How's that played out in your own life, would you say?
Oh, I mean, like, of course, there's been discrimination. Of course, like, I've faced so many challenges. I do face challenges, and like, there's just so much that to think about, you know, in terms of like the intersection of all of these things. But one thing is that I wouldn't change my identity for anything. I love being a Black Muslim woman. And you know, I remember hearing someone speak, and they were saying that like, if you want to change, if you want real change, if you want meaningful change, then invite Black women to the platform. And it's particularly Black women who are disabled or who are older, who are, you know, because the more marginalization that you face, actually, the wider the scope is. You see potential. So being from a point and working where you can see potential, you can see, okay, being away from, and even this whole idea of the margins, I don't necessarily like it, because I don't think it's as simple as that. But like talking in terms that like, I haven't worked out a theory about it. So talking in terms that like we all sort of like understand and trying to work our way through, like actually being on the margins and not being in the center, you are able to see more. I remember growing up, you know, I consider myself, or some people would say, you know, I'm a in sort of like Black young people would say, oh, she's a fluffy, as in I'm big, I'm a woman of size, right? So like, I remember growing up, I used to get teased by people, you know, and like my parents were really from a strict background. I was a strict Christian background. Not even that strict, just old school Jamaican, really, which is generally, people would call it strict now. But and so I wasn't allowed to do certain things. I wasn't allowed to go out certain places until I got older, you know. And even then, still, that was negotiating a sort of like, I remember when I was young, I started DJing, right? And so my mom was really uncomfortable with it. But then when I kind of explained it to her as a hobby, she would let me go and DJ places, but I still wasn't allowed to go out for enjoyment. But I say all of this to say that like growing up, I wasn't necessarily the poster girl of like what it means to be attractive, a dark-skinned Black woman, you know, or Black girl. So I wasn't in with a lot of the cool gangs, right? I wasn't in with a clique. And so what this meant is that I was able to read people. I was able to read when people were being sincere, when people weren't being sincere. And like, I feel like this is a skill. And actually, when you're so-called discarded, when you're so-called on the margins, oftentimes you are able to have a deeper insight, and a deeper insight about just the world generally. And you're not so sucked in by surface. And I think that's a superpower.
Yeah, gosh, so many things that come to mind when you're speaking. Let me just read some of these. So Bilal is trying to be funny. Bilal Hassam said, Salam, Tanya, how's the fire in her belly?
I had
an inside joke.
Still burning, bro. Still burning, still burning.
And then someone's mentioned, I'm a South African currently living in Houston. Unfortunately, I've witnessed discrimination in the masjid. If Muslims can be aware of this, then only we as an ummah can grow. You know, you know, these layers of discrimination. That's what I was thinking, you know, even as Muslims, and then Muslims of different backgrounds, and how that kind of plays out with each other. It's all this stuff is there.
I wrote a piece. Sorry,
oh, good. Go on. No, go on. Go. You wrote a piece.
It's just a draft. I don't even know if it's going to be accepted, but I wrote a piece for like a report, and the piece was called Complicit. And it is about like, it was supposed to be, it's a personal piece about reflections after like George Floyd, right? And so I guess what I was trying to say is that we are complicit in this. Oftentimes when people see like a murder, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so disgusting. How did we get here? I've been hearing a lot. How do we get here? You know, how did this happen? But actually, it's not the murder. Again, the murder is the tip of the iceberg, everything beneath. So it is going to the masjid and not wanting to pray next to that person. It is people being racist and being passive. Oh no, that's just oh no, you're too sensitive. Oh no, you got a chip on your shoulder. All of these things, right, is this slow dehumanization. I feel like in so many places around the world, when we look at, you know, the media, there's a process of dehumanization going on. When we look at how we interact with each other and like superiority, there's a process of dehumanization going on. Even say, for example, as you know, in many sort of Pan-African sort of ideologies, and I consider myself to an extent sort of Pan-African, but like there's this whole idea about once upon a time we were kings and we were queens. Or some people have this, who follow Egyptology, say we were gods or what have you. But what about just being human? What if there's something really beautiful and something really sacred in being human? In whichever way, I feel like we are being dehumanized, and that whole idea of stripping away of our humanity. And I think it is the small things that lead up to it. It is the small, that person is treated in a different way and we don't say anything, we're quiet. Or our parents may discriminate against a person of a particular race or particular background or particular class, and we're quiet. And slowly, it becomes the norm. And that's how we get to George Floyd. It didn't happen by a police just one day waking up. It happened by these small little, basically, processes of like dehumanizing people.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about being a DJ, and then you sort of mentioned that you were Christian. And then I was thinking about, I think I saw again recently, you're known as the hip hop hijabis when you were part of
pilgrimage.
And so just give us a bit of a kind of whistle stop of all of that. How did that stuff all kind of come together? What was that part of your journey?
Just to set the record straight, Sakina and I at no point wanted to be called hip hop hijabis. That was a working title, and it was like, oh, what about hip hop hijabis for working title? And then by time they sort of like, there was a documentary, and by time it got sold to Al Jazeera, it was like, yeah, hip hop hijabis. I'm like, I thought this was the working title, but anyway,
things happen.
Sounds
catchy, I guess.
I am a co-founder of a group that was called Poetic Pilgrimage, with at the time my partner Sakina and my friend and my dear sister, like Sakina Pilgrim. I got so much love and so much respect for her, and it's so beautiful that our journeys have taken us in different places, yet we have created something so beautiful together. And actually we really, Allah has allowed us to pave the way for so many people to do so many different things. So alhamdulillah, I'm so grateful for that. But Sakina and I are both from Bristol, born and raised in Bristol, and we met we went to the same school, we were in choir together, but we weren't really friends. And then we met at a talent show. And at this particular talent show, I was hosting, she was performing. And we just had so many questions as young girls about life, about the meaning of life, about, you know, religion, about like why society is in the state that it is, about perceptions of womanhood and what it means to be a Black woman in society. And like, why are we sort of like portrayed in a certain way? And do we have to follow these stereotypes? Really quite profound question for two teens, you know? Exactly. And really that's how Poetic Pilgrimage started. It started as this journey of searching, of inquiry. It was never a group. It was never a music group, a spoken word group. It was a friendship. And so like I used to write, Sakina used to write, and then we was like, oh, why don't we start a group? This is like way later after our friendship. We used to listen to music together, philosophize, like talk, you know, and we were just into like a lot of alternative things in comparison to like our sort of friends, you know. And then when we moved to London, lost contact with each other. About 6 months later, we found each other. And 6 months when you're in a new city feels like a million years, right? And then we just started writing together and performing. You know, we weren't Muslim, we were just writing and we were performing. And a lot of people asked us, so, you know, were you called Poetic Pilgrimage from the beginning? And yeah, we were, because, you know, even though we are Muslim now, we've always been on a journey of spirituality. We've always been on a journey of seeking and loving and experiencing the world in a way that we saw things as beautiful, right? And like we were looking for beauty, we were looking for poetry in everything that we did, right? Being from the Caribbean or descending from the Caribbean, our parents are from the Caribbean, like spirituality is intrinsic. You can't separate spirituality, especially from Jamaica, you know, the land where, you know, Maliki thick books was found, you know, and are now stored in the British Museum. The land where like Rastafarianism started, where like Pocket Church and all of these different things Kumina started, whether it's Islam or not, this spirituality, this hotbed of spirituality. And that's the island where we're from. So it was going to be inside of us. And then much searching. And even though we were together, it was really quite separate journeys, searching, looking for God, looking for what's the meaning of life. Islam was probably the last thing. No, not probably. Islam was the last thing. I didn't think I would be Muslim. If someone said to me, even just 9 months before conversion, that you're going to be Muslim, I would have laughed in their faces. But we converted same day as well. I think Sakina sort of like really made that journey, that step before me, and my sort of, I guess, trajectory towards it was like, I was like, kid, what's going on? What's up with this religion? So I started doing researching into Islam, really to just try and present the side that I thought was Islam. Growing up in Bristol, you see a very sort of like cultural side of Islam, and that's not a critique, but it wasn't my culture, so I couldn't relate to it, right? And so I was like, what do you want to come into this? But then I couldn't deny beauty, I couldn't deny spirituality. And actually, looking at Jamaican culture, I'm not talking about dancehall culture or the stereotypes that people think about, but looking at Jamaican culture, there's so much that is aligned with Islam, which is why even there's a scholar, I think she's Bangladeshi scholar by the name of Sultana Firdoza. She I don't know if she's still in Jamaica, but she lived in Jamaica for a long time, and she was like studying the island and studying the history and looking at actually how many of these things that we associate with just being Jamaican are sort of like signs pointing towards the fact that Islam was there. So things like the Ham and Malachific book, or in my dad's area of Jamaica in St. Thomas, right? We had like these rebellions, but the idea is that actually a lot of these rebellions were jihads against slavers, right? People were like, how are we going to be a slave to you when we are a slave to Allah, In the area where my dad lives, again, like there's a place called Yalis, but it's spelled Ya Allah, right? So all of these different signs that are pointing to the fact that there is a history of Islam that is there. And I don't remember what my point is, but I'm Jamaican.
When was the last time you went there?
I have not been to Jamaica for so long. It's so funny that I'm such a Sakina and I lived together for several years, and it's like we used to have this big Jamaican flag outside our window. It's so funny, because like people were like, oh yeah, you're the girls with the Jamaican flag. Like that's how we were known in the area. I remember once Sakina came into my bedroom and she was like, G, it's so beautiful. I was like, what's beautiful? She's like, sometimes when it's really quiet, I just hear the flag blowing outside my window. But that's how Jamaican we are. But I personally haven't been to Jamaican for a while, and I was actually planning on going this year, and things happened, this Corona thing. But I definitely do want to go. I feel like there's something calling me there. There's something inside of me there's a part of me. There's a part of me that is there that needs to be healed, a young child who's there who needs to be healed. And also there's something else that's calling me, a deeper thing calling me there. So yeah.
Well, it definitely seems like that to me. That's why I asked the question, and it doesn't surprise me that you haven't been, just because that's the story for lots of people, circumstance, money, and all of it adds up as well. You have to kind of take all of that. We've had a comment from Tavasha Shannon, I think from America, right? Assalamu alaikum, Queen Muneera, she's saying.
Oh, wa alaikum salam. Thank you, Queen.
And I think there's a question from Hasnan. It says, it's interesting you talk about looking for beauty, yet how do you confront the problems you see and you observe in your research and work on a personal level? How do you deal with that?
With great difficulty, like, first of all, I do realize that there's so much, it's difficult. How can I say? There's so much ugly in this world, right? But the ugliness of this world exposes the beauty. If everything was beautiful, then we wouldn't know it was beautiful, right? So it is finding the respite in these beauty. It is finding the respite in conversations like this. It is finding the respite in seeing children playing. I know that sounds so corny and so like cliche, but actually there's just sometimes you just get a sense of peace in things. It is really difficult. It is, because I know a lot of people will probably consider me to be political, and I don't deem myself political. I ask a lot of questions. I'm not content with just accepting. I do ask a lot of questions, and but I also try to keep hope. I also try not to be in despair. And actually, I think part of our duty, part of our job as Muslims is to inquire, is to search, is to look. But it's difficult. We're living in some tough times, man. Like. And so I let it be known. I've always let it be known. I've always spoke about it before it was sort of like cool to like talk about well-being and mental health. Like I struggle from probably the age of about 13. I've been like anxiety, depression, like even at one point I would say sort of like suicidal ideation. Do you get what I mean? And it's like these are things, even it's interesting because even recently, okay, so this is going into, I'm not going to go too much into it, but like I was thinking about just the idea of like victimhood and the idea about being a victim, right? And then, some people move past the stage of victim and then move into a state of victor. And my whole questioning was like, at what point does someone move out of victorhood? Like, imagine like you're married to someone, right? And then you get divorced. Are you always this person's ex-husband or ex-wife? Do you always have to be connected to that person? And I was thinking about that, and I was like, for some of the things that I experienced in my life, maybe I've passed victorhood now. Maybe I'm just Muneera. Maybe that's just all behind me. And then out of nowhere, when looking at things, to so many things to do with just like situations that I was just in at the time, I felt myself undoing, spiraling, and going back to like my teen self. And I was like, when does this end? But it doesn't end. It's a continuation, and we just have to strive every single day to see beauty. And some days we won't. Some days we'll see ugly. Some days we won't want to get up. Some days we may stay in our bed. Some days we may not get up without someone pulling us up off the floor. But it's just life. This is life. This is the life that we're living,
Yeah, I mean, it's so good that you're saying it, and because it will resonate with people, and it can feel very overwhelming. I would say I've been feeling that a lot recently, and it's hard to sort of know how to process it sometimes. I just wonder, have you always been able to? Because your words are just, even when you're talking now, and whenever I think about you, I think of someone, deep, that's able to kind of express stuff in ways that I could only ever dream of doing.
Oh,
and I just wonder whether I just wonder whether have you always been able to express yourself through poetry and through kind of words? Or so when you talk about your younger teenage self, was it there then as well? Were you always good at that stuff?
It's interesting because I think when you're young and you express yourself, you're just a naughty child talking too much, So like I used to get into trouble a lot for, again, having this inquisitive mind, having this like inquiry, like being interested, wanting to know the reasons why. And plus, like I have like dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD. And so then there comes a point where like my way of learning and my way of understanding, with some things, I need you to be literal, or I need you to tell me why, or you can't just say, oh, do this. You need to tell me why do I need to do this, or how do I do this? And that was taken as a sort of like I was trying to be difficult, particularly in school. So I got into trouble for that, and I got into trouble for opinions. But yeah, definitely there was writing from a young age. I started writing, or not yet started writing, I was always writing. But the time that I remember thinking, oh, this isn't just me expressing here. This is a poem, and this poem connects with people. In Bristol, I don't remember, I think it was early 90s. There was a fairground. Bearing in mind that Bristol's quite at the time, it seemed like a small city. In the Caribbean community, we all knew each other, right? And so a young man by the name of Marlon Thomas, he was dating, or his girlfriend was a white girl. They went to a fairground in somewhere in Bristol called the Downs, right? And these fairground workers didn't like this mixed couple being together. So, they started calling the girl names, and then they started calling the guy names, and then the guy started to try to defend his girl. All of a sudden, these guys came out with baseball bats, came out with knuckle dusters, all of this, and beat him. He literally he died, but was resuscitated. But his life was never the same. And Marlon was such a beautiful soul. He probably is still a beautiful soul. I don't know why I'm talking about him like his past, but like, he would never be the same. He'll never be able to articulate himself. He'll never be able to like feed himself and live in the way and thrive in the way that he was. Well, I guess God had a different plan, but thrive in the way that we understand that a young man is to come to thrive, right? And I couldn't deal with that because I knew racism existed in name. I knew racism existed and people may call you slurs and like slurs. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's racism, right? But I didn't realize it was so ugly and it was so violent and it was so bloody. And it was a few people who got attacked because people tried to jump in, this, that, and the other. And there was a point I remember I was talking about in school, was trying to raise money for like the Justice for Marlon Thomas campaign. And then there came a point where school was just like, nope, can't talk about this anymore. For the first week we were allowed to talk about it, it's like, nope, can't talk about this. This is disruptive, this, that, and the other. And I didn't know what to do. And a poem came out. And because someone heard that I had written a poem, they asked me to perform that poem. And that was the first time I was like, this is a thing. I do express myself. And yeah, that's how I discovered that writing was a thing. And more than
you know that poem? You still have that poem?
No, I don't. It's a shame. It's such a shame. I remember it started, Marlon was a good friend. He'll never let you down. And that's about it.
It's powerful though, what you say, and that it's good that it came out in that way. What's your best think about the different you've performed in all sorts of different places and stuff. What's the sort of best, I don't know if I want to say best, like I don't know how else to say it, but, you know, what's something that kind of comes to mind if I say that to you? What's the best performance you've done or the one that's made the most impact on you?
This is a real cop out.
I mean, I just think it must be, I could never imagine doing it. Like I can do some stuff, I couldn't do what you do, that performing thing. I mean, it must be an amazing feeling, really.
Yeah.
So what's had the biggest impact on you?
I don't even know, to be truthful. And I was thinking about this, like, and I really don't know. This is a cop out. What I would say though is like, I've been, I guess, like in many ways, many of the roles that I do are performative. And I think probably one of the roles in which I took the greatest pride in is like either workshop facilitation or teaching, particularly when I was teaching English. Like, I don't know what it was about that, but like being in the environment and seeing people who feel like they can't do something at the start of something. So whether it's they feel like they can't write a poem, they feel like they're not a poet, they feel like they can't speak English, they can't do something. And just to witness them like searching and trying, and there's something, you know, really, it sounds bad, but there's something really beautiful about witnessing struggle and then witnessing someone coming out of that and how they are. And so I would say probably in the space of like delivering learning. And I'm really sort of keen on thinking about, like, at the moment I've been reading, sorry, you could tell I'm so obsessive with things. So when I read a book or when I read something, I talk about it a lot. So at the moment I'm reading, I've just finished reading Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which is about, you know, making learning and seeing learning as, you know, and I'm also reading a book by, I can't even find it, I don't know what it's called, but it's by Bell Hooks. And again, it's about teaching and learning. And what was really beautiful about it is about seeing teaching and learning from a space of sacredness and from a place of love. And actually, we're all in there to learn, and everybody's a teacher. And actually, it should be a methodology that is liberating for our souls, liberating for our bodies, for our limbs. And so more so than I love performing. I love conversating. I love talking to people. I love finding out about people and audiences and this, that, and the other. But I think it is the space of learning and struggle and trying, like through English or through poetry, that I enjoy the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing that you say it like that, and I'm sure there's lots of sort of teachers in particular that would relate to it. But I think it's such a shame that now in sort of school settings, the idea of teaching is also, well, obviously at the moment it's very, very tough, but it's become so much about paperwork and all of that. That's why people really struggle with it, thinking what they went into teaching for all of those moments that you're talking about. How they kind of get lost sometimes in all the kind of bureaucracy and testing, and I feel like that spiritual side, I guess, if you can say it like that, is kind of lost a bit, not through fault of the teachers, but through the fault of the way the system kind of has ended up.
Yeah,
so I think a lot of people would relate to that.
And it's like, in many ways, the system is just trying to replicate. It's trying to replicate itself in terms of it's trying to build this sort of transactionary system that just leads to making money, and so it doesn't develop people. It doesn't allow people to sort of like learn from a place of liberation, learn from a place of love, learn from a place of sacredness, and that actually this is all of our right, and we have a right to enjoy learning. We have a right, so I think, I hear what you're saying 100%.
So what's your plans now? I mean, in terms of, apart from going to Jamaica, we'll be all very happy when you get there. I feel like you should do a trip for lots of people, take them with you or something, but you can run trips to Jamaica. But what's your next, what are your next plans? You say you're working with sort of people with mental health challenges. It's obviously part of your, what you're really good at. Are you planning to continue that, or what's your kind of next steps really?
Yeah, so that's been really quite intense for me, because I never really imagined myself working in a sort of like management role. I always saw myself in a more like a therapeutic role if I was to move anywhere within the organization. So the management role is just for a year. In March, sort of April time, that sort of finishes, which I'm a little bit glad about, because I want to go back, and what I was doing there initially was developing programs for young girls, essentially. And so I want to continue doing that and continue working in the field of like mental health. At the same time, I am working on my first official collection with Ben I Books, which is due out next year. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm thinking about just a project of conversations to go around that. So whether that be podcasts or videos, or, I'm thinking about,
please, that would be amazing. So that's going to be a collection of what, poems, or what collection?
Yep. So that's going to be a collection of poems. So I'm excited about that. I'm working with the English Touring Theatre. I'm working towards my first play. I'm taking it really, really slowly. So I'm not sure how long that would take, but I'm not pushing myself or rushing myself. Doing community research project with an organization in Bristol. And so just really looking at new ways of knowledge. When I in my second MA, my thesis was essentially about looking at knowledge, and how, like, what is deemed as knowledge and what is deemed as objective, and thinking about new methodologies of creating, or new ways of creating knowledge. So is poetry a form of embodied knowledge, right? Like autoethnography, this too is knowledge, right? This too is a methodology of coming towards ideas, thinking about the way how we interact with like spirituality. This is a form of knowledge, right? So just a lot of things, really, a lot of things. I'm doing cycling. I'm cycling at the moment.
That's definitely a Bristol thing as well, right?
Yeah.
My son, he said, just bought a bike. He texted me 2 days ago. He's
awesome.
got into the bike thing. Yeah, he said it's only old, but it will do the job. I thought it's great.
We've got a lovely cycle path down here. So yeah. So me and my co-founder Saba were doing Black Muslim Women Bike. So all sorts of things.
That's cool. I just saw a message here from Charlie Ginsey, who's a rabbi who was one of my previous people that I had in conversation, was also amazing. And she's right in saying that last time I had a conversation with Saliha, we ended up figuring out that we all wanted to go to Bangladesh to her house. And now she's saying we're figuring out a way to get to Jamaica. So it's like,
let's do it.
There's something about women thinking like we want to go together.
Let's do it, man.
I've always wanted to ask someone like you is, how on earth do you learn the words by heart? Like,
my
honestly,
Lord,
is that just I've always wanted to know, when I watch people do stuff by heart, sometimes really long pieces. And what is that? Does it just come naturally, or how does it work? What's
For
it?
some people, it comes naturally. For me, it really does not come naturally. Honestly,
Mm,
like it is so difficult. I don't know. I think a lot of it is because like I do I find it my short-term memory is terrible. So I
mm,
have to try and put it into my long-term memory, right? But the
mm.
process of trying to put something into your long-term memory is quite difficult within itself. So yeah, I struggle with it. I manage it. Allah is merciful, you know.
Oh, it's amazing. You never make it look like a struggle.
Thank
I saw
you. Thank
you
you.
did a TEDx. I'd recommend everyone look up your Bristol TEDx performance. That was probably the one I watched of you more recently. No, that must have been last year, was it?
That was last year, November. Oh, what? A year
Last
ago,
year.
coming up to a year.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. This year's been crazy. So
Yeah.
listen, before we finish, so I did give you a heads up about this. So
Yeah.
I always like to ask people 5 questions and resist the temptation to talk about them, but just to get people to get a bit more of a flavor of you. And
Yeah.
all of them we could have another hour-long conversation about, but we won't. So I'll start off with the first one. So sort of 5 questions in 5 minutes is the kind of idea.
Okay.
So the first one, or sort of 2 together, is a favorite food and a favorite place in the world.
Okay, so a favorite food is yam. I love yam, probably with like strawberries.
Yeah.
Yam
Wow.
with tomato stew and mackerel. Like
Wow.
a West African tomato stew cooked by
Mhm.
Sister Amina and enjoyed with Sister Amina and
Mm.
Rakaya.
Mhm. Lovely, very nice. And a favorite place in the world?
I'm going to say the my sheikh in Senegal.
Mhm.
He has this sort of like roof, and I just love thinking about being there and just sipping tea or eating food at nighttime. So the roof, either that roof or in prayer, even though my prayers are messed up, but like being in prayer when I'm there, I feel like, yeah, this is home.
Amazing. And what about a favorite quote or saying?
A favorite quote or saying. Um I probably it was at one point. I'm good enough, I have enough, and I do enough, because I feel like a lot of the times I had this sort of like lack mentality, and I just had to remind myself for a long time. But throughout this lockdown,
Say
the
it again.
saying that
I'm good enough. What? I'm good
I'm
enough.
good enough. I'm good enough. I have enough. I do enough. But
Okay.
probably like the saying that I've been like going to throughout lockdown is, Mooney, what you doing? Come on, you got work to do. So yeah, that's my saying.
um, what about a lesson or advice that you'd give to your younger self?
I,
How do you see yourself, Tanya or Muneera, or kind of a mix of both? You get both
mix of,
going on.
I am literally a blend of
Blend of
both.
both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
am a
understand
blend
that.
of both.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, as you know, I had a birthday recently, and I requested that like people who are dear to me send me people who are dear to me and who are older than me, because I was scared about turning this particular age, right?
Mm,
Send me like wisdom about this age, right? And so I realized that actually in doing that, I was in such a space of being a child that actually my younger self probably has more to teach my older self. I think when
mhm,
I was younger, I was definitely more outgoing. I was less conscious of myself. I was less conscious of people being aware of me. And I think, I don't want to say since I've come to Islam, but I've definitely in my adult life, I think it's my adult life, being aware of other people looking at me, I've policed myself a lot more, and I'm just trying to break out of that. So my younger self will probably say, "Yo, stop policing yourself and don't allow other people to police you."
Wow. I mean, honestly, I've not heard anybody in times when I've heard people ask these questions in different ways. No one's really put it quite like that. It's quite something. That's really quite something. But I'm going to resist the temptation to talk to you about it because it will go on a long time. So, a favorite Quran, a verse of the Quran or a hadith, something that comes to you.
Okay, this is really bad because I was trying to remember, and I was actually trying to like, what surah is this? but actually, I'm just going to say the verse, and
Yeah,
like
yeah, please.
in different ways, it is said in different
Mm,
translations, and said it's said
mhm,
in different ways. But on that day, she will proclaim her chronicles, and
mhm,
like Allah talking about the earth, and I just love the fact that like there is something in this earth that, first of all, the earth is going through a story. It's not just us as human beings that are going through a story. All of these stories of old are always the tales of human beings, but actually the planet itself is going through a story, and that story hasn't been told. I know you haven't got long, but I think a lot about, like, say, for example, how many people have died in the sea, and we don't know, and the sea hasn't told us that. You know, how many people have sat at a tree, and how many times a tree witnessed lovers hugging and
mhm,
or
mhm.
embracing, and just the idea that the earth has a narrative and has a chronicle and has a tale that will be told is just beautiful to me.
Yeah, it's amazing. So amazing. And then the last but not least, what or who do you need in your life to thrive? So my organization's called Thrive. I love the word thrive, but I realize it means different things to different people. But
That is a difficult question,
mhm,
because I go through work, 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 burn, work, work, work,
you.
burn. And
Hmm.
I don't think it's a healthy model.
Hmm.
I'm really trying to change that. But I guess around me, I need understanding folk, you know,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
need understanding people, because sometimes I just ghost. Sometimes I am not about, can't get me anywhere, email,
Hmm.
WhatsApp, but I need that time because I don't. So I guess like I need understanding people. B, I guess I need, and this is for me, this is what I'm in the process of doing now. I need to set my boundaries. I have very weak boundaries. I say yes, 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 or I end up in situations where I don't tell people what my boundaries are, and I end up feeling abused after the situation. So
Hmm.
I feel like in order to thrive, I need to be able to express myself. I need healthy boundaries and just good people around me, and good food, and nice comfortable bed. Is that too much? I want all of that.
No, that's all right. It's good because it's important that we know what we need, right? And some people need lots of people, and some people need, like you say, a few. I think your definition of people who understand you and are willing to give you, cut you some slack when you need it, I think is
Yeah,
crucial when
yeah.
you're in like your kind of the way you manage yourself. It's very important. So I think
Mm.
that's very powerful.
What do you need to thrive?
So for me, it's good people. I think
Mm,
pretty much straight away, and I feel very as I've got older, especially I've realised how important trust is.
mm, mm,
When you can't, when you realise you can't trust someone, it's very
yeah,
difficult. I find it. So I think trust is important, and just having good people, not toxic. I don't like negativity. Like
yeah.
it's always tricky. You mentioned earlier about how we have to be. It's Islamic to be searching. I also feel, added on to what you were saying, I think it's also Islamic to be positive as well, but not
Mm,
unrealistic. Not that we don't know what's going on in the world, but
mm,
this
mm,
kind of
mm, mm,
level of optimism. I think the Prophet, peace be upon him, definitely had that. And I find people who just are moany, then
mm, mm,
I find that I just find it very difficult. Maybe that's not a good thing, but I find those kind of people very hard.
mm,
If
mm,
I've got
mm,
too much of that, it has too much of an impact on me. So,
mm,
good people and sort of people that I can relate to.
mm,
That's
mm,
what,
mm.
and I feel like, I've got a lot of energy, but I wouldn't have it if it wasn't for all of these amazing people that I have in
Yeah.
my life that I've chosen to keep with me close by.
Can I
Anyway,
add a bike as well? Sorry, I'm so sorry. My bike is just
right.
making me
Yeah,
feel so, like, I feel so renewed when I'm on my bike. I just
so
I
good.
want all the
I've,
bike.
I love a bike. I love bikes as well, and I've got a bike, but it's at the moment it's in a situation where it's covered up and it doesn't feel easy for me to get it in and out. So
Yeah.
that becomes almost like a barrier, which is a bit frustrating. But then
Mm,
just think I just want to go out because when I'm out, I love it as well.
mm,
I think it's great that you started a group of trying to get people to do it with you.
yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you doing it regularly, or how's it kind of going?
So like a lot of the activities that we do is based online, but I am connecting with a lot of people in Bristol. But I miss being in the one thing that made me think you should move back to London is cycling,
Oh,
because
really?
there's a real strong community of just riders and
Seems to be.
cyclists that I
Yeah,
have in
yeah, yeah.
London that I just want to be around.
Well, you can, inshallah, you can.
Inshallah,
Once
inshallah.
this crazy stuff is, we open up again. So let me ask you, have you got it would be so cool if you could with some sort of I don't want to say performance, but words of some sort.
You know something? I knew this part was coming, but I completely forgot about it. So I'm quickly rushing to my Instagram to try and find a poem. Bear with me one moment. I think it's really important to be able to perform like poetry about our bodies, like in Muslim spaces. I feel like oftentimes I've been disconnected from my body, and for various different reasons, but I think we just need to get back to being rooted in our body as a woman. And sometimes people may think it's uncomfortable. Why are you saying this? And it's not like explicit or anything like that, but I think women should be able to speak about their bodies. So excuse my tone, but I'm gonna read a poem called Dear Body. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear body. Thick body, brown body, round, curved and clutch body, soft body. My body soaked in lavender with a fragrance somewhere between mangoes and vanilla body. Dear you, body. Stout like your grandma, curved like your mama, thick skin and subtle heart, blemished skin and breaking heart. I'm sorry for all the times that I've neglected you. Failed to shower you with gratitude for carrying me through all that you have. You are more than vessel, more like vital. Without you, this world is void and without form. Has no thought and no feelings, no function, no witnessing God wanting to be known. No stumbling over subhanallah when hearing it for the very first time. No bended knees, no fudged tears, no closed eyes when kissed on the neck, no faint breath when kissed on my back. Their body, my carry me through hurt body, my compartmentalize until I could deal with body, heal with body. I've neglected you, bitched at you, and bullied you for being so fat, so dark, so light, so hair not long enough, hair too thick under my chin, breast too big, butt too small, feet too flat, shoulders too broad. How have you coped, body? Not broke down, body. Even when you were pinned down and screamed out, and once again you were pinned down but learnt not to scream out because last time there was nobody, just you and somebody who wished to colonize you like a country, rich in resources, mother tongue gone, and all that remains is corrupted languages that have taught us not to love our bodies. So it's no wonder I've neglected you, at one point even loathed you. But now I need you to know that you are heavenly, the type of body that continents could be named after. Muneera. Land of silk tongues and wild ravines, like stretch marks carved in tummies and thighs. Land bountiful and overflowing. House of hope. Home of hearts. You are loved. Dear body. Thick body. Brown body. Round, curved and clutch body. Soft body. Thank you for carrying me through.
Oh, honestly, my heart was racing when you were doing that. It's amazing. I've seen it written, but I hadn't heard it like that. Honestly, so powerful.
Thank you.
We can just look at that. It speaks for itself and so brilliant. And may Allah bless you and continue to surround you with the right people and always have a bike to ride and go to Jamaica. Frazana just said, "Oh my God, please post the poem. We'll have to do a link to it. Have you got it up somewhere online somewhere?"
I've got an Instagram, but I haven't been on Facebook for like months. I'm like, maybe I might just post it there.
But Instagram, someone's just asking, how can we follow you on Instagram? So what's your Instagram?
Yes. So my Instagram is Muneera Pilgrim. So Muneera _ Pilgrim. So like Muneera Muneera, because sometimes people spell it with an I, but it's actually Eera. Muneera _ Pilgrim or Mooney Pilgrim, and you'll find me.
No, that was amazing. So
by the way, Ameen for me, but Ameen for you too, to the dua.
No, inshallah, we'll continue to be friends and sisters, and it's really, honestly, it's a privilege to call you a friend, and may you continue to go from beautiful strength to strength, and your sincerity and love and depth.
Ameen.
All always comes out, and you always get me thinking. And I'm sure people who haven't heard you before will be blown away today, and when they listen to it afterwards. So it's been amazing, honestly. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
being
much. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for watching and commenting, and anybody who's watching it afterwards. And surely a great conversation. It's given me much food for thought, and a lot of emotion actually coming up. So I hope it's been good for all of you too. And someone's just posted a link here. Oh, link to your
Thank you.
Yeah. That's Charlie. She's being clever with the technology. Anyway, inshallah, we'll go now, and keep in touch with do find Muneera on Instagram and keep in touch with her. That way you can be guaranteed a lovely journey with her, inshallah. So take care, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.